Hey, your name has been called. The audience is waiting. Your heart is beating faster than normal. Your hands feel slightly intense. And your mind is racing through 100 possibilities. Now, whether it's a presentation at work, a speech at an event, a difficult conversation, a classroom lesson, a church ministry, a podcast recording, or a digital presentation, many of us know exactly what that pressure feels like. Welcome to the Listening Heart, folks. I'm Richard Fontenay, and I'm your host today. Now, if you are new to this podcast, welcome. And if you are returning, a heartfelt welcome back. Now, before we begin, I invite you to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thank you for doing so. At its core, leadership integrates how we think, act, and live across business, work, and life. From a scriptural and Christian values-driven perspective, spiritual leadership is the practice of leading from within, guided by wisdom, faith, values, and a higher being. Just to remind you, on Wednesdays, our discussions turn to coaching talks, which focuses on performance leadership in the traditional workplace. And on Fridays, we turn our attention to adaptive leadership in the digital world. And remember, although this podcast concentrates on spiritual leadership, we are all called to lead in some way, no matter our purpose in life. Today, we will explore finding peace in pressure, God's presence when speaking before others. It really means learning to communicate with courage, peace, and trust when our voice is called upon to serve others. Now, many people rank public speaking among their greatest fears. Some fear making mistakes. Some fear criticism. Some fear rejection. And others fear simply being seen. Yet, throughout Scripture, we discover something fascinating. God repeatedly called ordinary people to speak in extraordinary circumstances. And most of them did not feel ready. Many felt afraid. Some even tried to avoid the responsibility entirely. And perhaps no example illustrates this better than Moses. When God called Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses immediately focused on what he saw as his weakness. In Exodus chapter 4, Moses said, "I am slow of speech and tongue." In modern language, Moses might have said, "I'm not good at presentations," or "I'm not comfortable speaking in front of people," or "I'm not the right person for this assignment." Yet God did not remove the calling because Moses' fear. Instead, God promised His presence. And that lesson is as relevant today as it was 1,000 years ago. Many leaders believe they must become perfect speakers before stepping forward. Scripture teaches something different. God often works through imperfect people who are willing to trust Him. That truth applies to business leaders who present strategies. It applies to managers who conduct meetings. It applies to teachers who lead classrooms. It applies to entrepreneurs who record videos. And it applies to parents who have important family conversations. Finally, it applies to anyone called to speak with truth, with wisdom, and compassion. One of the greatest mistakes speakers make is focusing entirely on performance. You know, we worry about how we sound. We worry about how we look. We worry about what people think. We worry about making mistakes. Now, the more attention we place on ourselves, the greater our anxiety often becomes. We let our ego get in the way of our true selves. Spiritual leadership offers a different perspective. Instead of asking, how am I performing? We ask, how am I serving? And that simple shift changes everything. When communication becomes an act of service rather than performance, pressure often begins to decrease. Jesus demonstrated this repeatedly throughout his ministry. Whether he was speaking to large crowds, small groups, religious leaders, individuals, his focus remained on serving others through truth, compassion, wisdom, forgiveness, and purpose. He was never driven by applause. He was driven by mission, and that provides an important lesson for us. The purpose of communication is not self-promotion. The purpose of communication is service. Prayer also plays a significant role in reducing speaking anxiety. Before important presentations, meetings, speeches, webinars, interviews, or difficult conversations, prayer helps to center the heart. Prayer reminds us that we do not carry every burden alone. And prayer shifts our attention away from fear and toward trust. Many years ago, I learned the value of quiet reflection and meditation before stepping into leadership situations. A few moments of prayer and quiet reflection, deep breathing, can calm emotional turbulence. A few moments of stillness can restore perspective, and a few moments of gratitude can transform our attitude. A favorite psalm of mine is Psalm 46, which reminds us to be still and know that I am God. Notice that the psalm does not say be perfect. It says be still. Stillness creates space for wisdom. Stillness creates space for trust. Stillness creates space for peace. Stillness creates space for the Spirit to unfold within us. Another example comes from the Acts of the Apostles. Now, after the resurrection of Jesus, his mourners gathered in a room, and they were afraid and very bewildered. Then, at what is known as Pentecost, Peter, fortified by the Spirit, addressed a vast crowd in many different languages. Peter, who denied Jesus, stepped with courage before his group. He didn't focus on himself, he focused on serving others. Courage is rarely the absence of fear. And more often, courage is taking action despite fear, and doing so with conviction and with service. That principle applies directly to presentations and public speaking. Many people wait until they feel completely confident before speaking. Confidence usually comes after taking action and is fueled by conviction and service. We may find the first presentation uncomfortable, yet the second may feel slightly easier, and the third may feel more natural. Growth often happens one conversation at a time, one presentation at a time, and one opportunity at a time. I know of a business leader who felt physically ill before presentations. I know of entrepreneurs who delayed recording videos because of fear. I know of professionals who avoided meetings because they lacked confidence speaking in groups. And yet, many of those same individuals eventually became capable communicators. So what changed? They prepared carefully, they practiced consistently, they focused on serving others, and they learned to trust the process. Spiritual leadership reminds us that our voice matters, not because we are perfect, and not because we have all the answers, but because communication is one way we contribute, encourage, and guide and serve others. In today's digital world, public speaking extends beyond stages and boardrooms. It includes such things as podcasts like this one, videos and virtual meetings and online teaching, social media messages, and webinars, and digital presentations. The opportunities have expanded dramatically over the past several years, and so has the pressure. And that is why finding peace and listening to God within ourselves and listening to Him under pressure matters most. And as we prepare to close, I invite us to reflect on 4 questions. What speaking opportunity are we avoiding because of fear? Are we focused on serving others, or are we focused on impressing others? How might prayer and reflection change the way we prepare for presentations? What message might God be calling us to communicate with courage? Now, these questions invite honest reflection. They also invite growth. Remember this: when we stand before an audience, enter a boardroom, teach a class, record a video, or have a difficult conversation, we never, ever stand alone. Scripture reminds us repeatedly that God equips those He calls, just as He called Moses and Peter. The question is not whether we feel completely confident. The question is whether we are willing to trust His presence one step at a time. Now take a moment this week to reflect, pray, and realign with your heart. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and refer it to a friend. And thank you for doing so. I'm Richard Fontenay signing off. Join me next week when our conversation turns to working for the common good. See you then. Bye now.